Welcome back to another thrilling episode of the Wild Edible World podcast. We've got a special one for you today. I'm Mike, one of your hosts.
And it's me, Steve. We've got a little bit of a treat for you. We got a gentleman that goes by the name Montana Mike, my good buddy, Michael Lagodny of Montana Yellowstone Tours. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks, Michael, Steve. Appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Yeah, we're happy that you're in town to spend this time with us. When are you going back to Montana?
Got another week. Have another week to enjoy the flatlands, and then back to Montana.
Right on. Well, we hope that you get your fill of the prairie while you're here. We wanted to ask you a couple questions, a little bit about where you grew up here with, because you and Steve known each other for a long time, right?
Yeah, I spent most of my adult life in Illinois. Yeah. Here with Steve around Joliet, Plainfield, and the southwest suburbs of Chicago.
Cool. And were you involved in natural education while you were here, or?
I was involved in fishing, hunting, and foraging here with Steve.
Wow, awesome. So you moved to Montana, you said 5 years ago, right?
5 years.
What brought you out there?
The wild places.
Awesome. Yeah, we're all about the wild places, aren't we?
Absolutely. That's our favorite thing.
Yeah.
Me too.
So out in Montana, you have a nature guiding business. What's it called?
Yes, my business is called Montana Yellowstone, and we do wildlife tours inside Yellowstone.
That's really awesome. The Yellowstone, right?
The Yellowstone.
The Yellowstone. There's Yellowstone Lake up in Wisconsin. There's a couple other wannabe Yellowstones, but this is the
most intact temperate ecosystem in the world, Yellowstone.
Oh, wow.
So, Mike and I have been hanging out this whole weekend, and there was one little tidbit that you dropped on us about the percentage of Yellowstone that is in Montana. Why don't you hit me with that really quick? Just I want to tie that into something.
Yeah, most of Yellowstone is in Wyoming. Only 3% of it is in Montana.
So is it safe to say that you're the only Montana Yellowstone Mike, anyway?
No, it wouldn't even be safe to call me Montana Mike because I'm from Illinois.
Fair enough.
Well, but you're getting your foothold in Montana for sure. You're making your mark, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool.
Hold on. You're wearing a hoodie that says Montana Mike.
Right. And if there's anything that you don't want to do in Yellowstone is leave a mark. So.
Well, okay. All right. Yeah. Respect. Leave no trace.
And we try to not even step on anything.
Yeah. Thanks. I respect that. We're a little bit more reckless out here in the,
the flatlands, as you say.
Yeah. As you say.
Yeah. Yellowstone's the place that we all decided to just let it be. So.
Right on.
Even for hunting, fishing, and foraging inside Yellowstone, we just observe and leave what we find for the animals.
Mm-hmm. Strictly forbidden, right?
Yeah.
Well, got to respect that. At least as a society, we've chosen one place where it's yes, this is sacred. Wow. One thing can be sacred.
It's exactly what Yellowstone is.
Yeah. Great.
I think that's so fucking cool, and I think it's cool that that the majority of the park is in other states, and that you are in the 3%, that little nug that pops through Montana at the northern gates, and I just think it's awesome. We were wasting good content before this interview started, and I was saying that if I had to invent a place for my friend Mike of Montana Yellowstone Tours, I would have invented Montana, a mountainous region where you can just eat half sandwiches to your delight, and just be out in nature. Throwing rocks. Yeah, you could throw things in any direction and not worry about injuring a person. But yeah, it's Montana, man. It's perfect for you. Even just the way of life out there, I think fits you very well. So tell us about your tours, I guess. What sort of things do you do as of right now?
Yeah, sure. Most folks enjoy to see as much as they can in a day or two. So a wildlife tour, which is mostly road-based, is what you'll find is most popular out of Gardner, Montana. But there are other opportunities.
Yeah, plug your pals. Let's hear it.
Because Yellowstone has more than half of the world's geysers.
Oh, yeah.
and some of the most unique geology in the world. So there's geyser tours, wildlife tours, and my favorite, which would be getting out on foot and doing hiking or running.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So part of like what our show is about foraging and food, and tying that into like getting out in nature and trying to commune with nature and be one and things like that. What our relationship started with food, your and I, and so Montana is so Chicago's like the mecca of delicious things, in my opinion, personally.
Yep, yep.
And then you leave this mecca in Montana. So what sort of delicious things do you find out in Montana, or things that you can say are tie into the whole food thing?
Yeah, what you'll find is in most demand is the wild huckleberry. And you can find that all across the north in Canada and a lot of the western United States. Huckleberries is like a native blueberry species. And then there are opportunities for huckleberries and wild strawberries and all kinds of things. Rose hips bloomed last year. That's what the bears are eating mostly at the end of the year. There's food all over the place in Yellowstone if you know where to look. And outside the boundaries, you can forage. So you can go beyond the technical boundaries of Yellowstone and forage for mushrooms, or wild chokecherries, huckleberries, wild strawberries everywhere.
What's probably your favorite thing that you gathered this year?
My favorite thing that I gathered this year, probably morels in the spring.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Very cool.
That's a nice, comfortable trophy. So how much did you gather, you think? Like, you get a nice little treasure trove?
Yeah,
or?
2 or 3 pounds for the banks of the Yellowstone River.
Oh, yeah.
That's so cool, man. Those are probably extra delicious too. I
Yeah.
feel like everything that you find in Montana. So we have trout here, but the trout in Montana are like, fuck, man, they blow your mind. So I feel like those morels are probably extra delicious too. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, so let's go back to what your wildlife tour is. So you said it's mostly road-based, so it's kind of like a Yellowstone safari? Or is that a little disrespectful?
It is a Yellowstone safari.
Okay.
But you're driving point to point and then getting out and observing wildlife. So the challenge for the day is to find grizzly bears and wolves.
And do you come across those often? Is that a likelihood?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
There are times in the summer where, speaking of food, the grizzly bears want to be high, turning rocks, eating moths, and they're too far to find.
So you're turning rocks, eating moths?
Yeah.
Moths.
Whoa.
A
Yeah.
significant food source for bears.
The biggest part of our tours is knowing where the animals are foraging and
Sure.
following them around through the seasons so that we can observe them.
Wow.
And there are points in the summer where the grizzly bears are too high. They're hard to find. And yes, they're feeding on army cutworm moths, eating thousands of them a day.
That's
What type of
fucking-
moth?
Army cutworm?
Army cutworm.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so fucking cool.
I've never heard of that.
You wouldn't think it, but they can get thousands of calories a day from
Yeah.
fat they get from moths.
Sure.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, like
Holy
whales
cow.
and the small things.
And
Yeah.
I believe they're also referred to as millers. So if you find yourself east of the Rocky Mountains, the weather blows those moths around, and you find them in vast concentrations.
Wow.
That's
That's
cool,
really
man.
interesting. And as far as wolves, I know that there's been a lot of work reintroducing wolf populations, right? And is there? I'm not really familiar with is there like a basically intentional lack of management because there's no hunting or management like that in Yellowstone?
Yeah, you're right. If there is an issue with an animal that was caused by humans, for example, by an accident on the road, humans might intervene.
Sure.
But everything that happens in Yellowstone, including forest fires, they manage by letting it go, unless they need to intervene to save structure or life. So yeah, they let nature take its course in Yellowstone.
Wow. And so you would say that the wolf populations have increased, right? Like as we're kind of seeing elsewhere where they're intentionally restoring populations, but
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a lot more going on there than I can share in this segment. But
Sure.
I will say that a book was just released by Rick McIntyre, which
Oh, hey, Steve.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Well, what's wrong, buddy?
Well, I just got this new water bottle, but it just looks so plain.
Well, have I got the store for you? Introducing the Wild Edible World Podcast Merch Store.
Wowie, wow!
It's the merch store where you can get all of your favorite podcasts merch for all your decorating purposes.
How do I find that?
Go to wildedibleworldpod.shopify.com or go to any of our Instagram and media accounts and view the link in the bio.
Wowie, wow!
Have you read through this one yet?
yes, I have.
Because it sounds super fascinating, man. I mean, I feel like every time you come into town, we have that conversation of where the wolf population is, and I know there's been a little bit of controversy as far as hunting and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's always something I'm concerned about, because I just feel like, I mean, if you listen to the story of the wolf reintroduction into Yellowstone and the effect it had on the population and the positive effects it had on even so much as like erosion, you know, like it's such an amazing thing. And it's you know, when you let nature kind of govern itself as opposed to try to do it yourself, it's going to do it the right way, you know. It might not look exactly the same as we would like it to look, but it's the right way no matter what. So this book sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Steve. Wolves actually changed the physical landscape of Yellowstone. And Rick McIntyre's book, an alpha-female book, Rick's observations show that the female of the wolf pack is the leader of the family,
sure,
as is in the rest of the mammal species. So I would encourage anybody to dig into wolf observations from Rick McIntyre and any of his wonderful books to learn more about the wolf. But you're right, there's been hunting and plenty of conflicts in the area that have made managing wolves challenging in Yellowstone.
Well, and I feel like that, you know, the more observation or the more eyes we can get on works like the alpha female is really important, because it's been, I think, long understood that there was a huge misconception and misinterpretation over the alpha male whole thing, you know, and like, you know, there's a whole, you know, male toxicity complex developed from this misunderstanding. So, yeah, kind of introducing these wolf hierarchies and the, you know, modern observations we have of it, not just the same old stuff that everybody repeats. That's really important. Thank you for that suggestion.
It sounds like you've been reading a little bit about wolves, because that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And it's looking like the most successful wolf leaders, like people, aren't the most aggressive ones, which is what alpha suggests. It's often the most empathetic, just like the most successful people.
Wow. That's really awesome. That fills my heart, man. That feels good to hear that.
So cool.
Yeah. Beyond that, let's talk a little bit more about like some of the. You said your favorite thing you foraged this year was morels.
I would say morels, and then also wild huckleberries
Okay, yeah.
and chokecherries. And actually,
Book
you know,
and
if you do
bug
come
choke
across
cherries.
a berry in Yellowstone, you know, you can try it.
Yeah.
But you're not taking a handful, or you're not taking
Sure.
something that otherwise would be used. But you can taste. So finding some perfectly fresh huckleberries on a hike around Grand Prismatic, probably my close second favorite moment.
Wow.
That's awesome,
That's
yeah.
certainly a highlight. And that's an interesting note too, because You know, a lot of people think that the like no collecting rule is like absolute, and it's like you're not allowed to touch anything. Nature's a museum if it's a forest preserve, and it's like, well, you know, you can walk around, you can nibble on a berry, like you can eat stuff. It's fine. You're not supposed to be walking out of there with, you know, a whole rucksack full of a bunch of uprooted plants. You know, that is what those rules are trying to prevent. Is just kind of the really low percentage of consumers that are going to end up abusing the resources, just because human nature is kind of like, we got to get what we can while we got it, because I feel like, been starving for most of human development, really. They're like, this is the most comfortable, most well-fed we've ever been, and now we're not even looking for stuff outside. And that's just like, you know, the whole relationship in of itself. But I've never had fresh huckleberries. I've had huckleberry wine. I've had, you know, stuff made from huckleberries, but like a fresh huckleberry is...
I haven't either. Sounds awesome.
It's
I
out
like
of this.
blueberries.
It's out of this world. But what gives it the taste and makes it exciting is that you went out and you found it for yourself.
Exactly.
So it's
We
you
love
know,
that feeling.
and when funny, you guys would like to hear this. When I'm out foraging in Yellowstone, sometimes I'm listening to your podcast. If you guys can get excited and inspired about foraging in Illinois, it makes me feel extra lucky and special to be doing it in Montana.
Yeah.
No, so I hear you out there. I hear you.
Cool. That's... my heart is filling even further.
Just because this has just been worming around in my mind for the last few minutes as we've been talking about huckleberries and responsible harvesting and things like that, this might be a little bit of a controversial question. It's not really something that we've approached on the podcast before yet, but in your opinion, like you're a hunter, you're a fisherman, you're a forager, you're a hiker, you're a guide, you're all these things, a man of many talents. What is your opinion on fishing and things like that? Obviously outside of the park, but like, is that something could that be considered like responsible stewardship to like take a couple trout from the river, or is it hurting like a population of this or a population of that? Like what's your general opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess the thing to keep in mind is that for years we have been managing streams and waterways.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and indigenous people before us.
Yeah, so every question about what you should or shouldn't harvest is specific to the waterway that you are on, because it's being managed for a purpose. In Yellowstone, the goal is to keep it native. So anything non-native is encouraged to take out if you should come across it. Mm-hmm. So knowing what the fish populations are in a given waterway and making your decision based on the regulations set forth, and just your own, personal feelings on whether or not you should or shouldn't harvest. And DNRs have all that information online, so just take their directions because they're managing it for a purpose, and just know before you go.
And I think we ran into that a little bit ice fishing, where it was like, one brook trout was the limit per day.
Yeah.
But there were some that they were like, go nuts, bro. They're invasive. Like if you find them.
Yeah, and you really have to take some time to look in what those rules are. But I mean, there's people working hard to manage those things for our,
And there were even some, if you caught them, you have to report them to the DNR.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we found this species in this lake. That's up.
Yeah, and outside of Yellowstone, there wouldn't be fishing opportunities like there are if they weren't intensively managed.
Sure.
So the reason those opportunities exist in Montana, even as wild as Montana scene, it's because Fish and Game are doing such a great job managing those fish populations for us.
Yeah, that's, I think, kind of an oversight. A lot of naturally minded people, they kind of look past is the idea that these hunting licensing organizations and, like I said, Fish and Game, DNR, a lot of these places are, funding the restoration, funding the conservation, and also the ones that do all this research and make the data sets available to us easily to just, to also inform ourselves and be more mindful about where we harvest, what we harvest, and making sure that we have a little bit of a focus on invasive species. So it's, it's definitely a team effort.
But that's awesome. I mean, it's great to hear your opinion on that, just
Yeah,
because
thanks for sharing your opinion.
there's things in this, in even in our foraging, even in our neighborhoods here that Michael and I do that we have to keep in mind. Like ramps are in some areas, like on on the East Coast and whatnot. They're not as plentiful as they are here. So just being mindful that we don't end up in a situation like that,
Yeah.
from over foraging, over harvesting. It's cool. So I just wanted to get your opinion as far as fish.
Yeah, it's not intuitive that we manage, our species manages everything else.
Yeah.
But even in the most wild places in the lower 48, we are. So where you might harvest an elk in one state, that elk might be protected in
Sure.
another state. You got to know.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a easy answer for anything. It's about being mindful whenever you're harvesting, no matter what animal or fish or plants. The mindfulness is most important because there's all sorts of rules and there's societal rules about ramps.
Yeah.
There's so much crap we get here in Chicago.
There's a lot of
for
stigma.
people. So much stigma about collecting ramps. And the fact is, we're swimming in ramps here.
Yeah.
We're swimming in them. Of course, yeah. There needs to be specific attention and conservation and care towards eastern coast and their ramp populations, which are troubled. I'm not denying that at all. But it is about taking into mind your local populations and finding the information, and also having the taking the time and patience and observing it as well. That's a huge part, in my opinion, of foraging, is just the long-term observation over years, watching these plants come and go. I never stop looking, even in the winter. I'm looking at all the dead standing plants and trying to think about like what will be there in the spring, and
Can I still eat that
can I
now?
still eat it now? Exactly. You never turn it off.
There's another interesting part of observing plants in Yellowstone. They have designated areas where you have a fence, and that restricts bison and the elk from grazing on
That's
those
cool.
parts of land. So,
Sure.
on tours, you can actually observe the difference in physical landscapes between areas bison and elk and all the other arguments can get to and can't.
Yeah.
Just look in the fence, and that's what it looks like without bison.
What does that look like? Just curious. Like,
It's incredible
Yeah.
how much impact those animals have just by stepping on.
yeah.
Just
all
by
little
footprint.
plants. Yeah, without even eating. Just
I mean, and there's just you never think about that, but there is a lot of life that probably suffers from that. I mean, and whatever, it's life cycle. But I was reading something the other day. I guess like fireflies spend their first 2 years without the ability of flight, so they're on the ground, they're in the grass, they're doing their thing down there, and a lot of like the chemicals that are being sprayed on lawns and whatnot kill them. So that's why, I mean, at least personally, in my own experience here, I feel like we used to see so many more at night. It used to be, look like, like a little, like the sky, like stars. Yeah, stars in the sky. But now you don't, I feel like you don't see them as much. And that's just, fireflies here in Illinois, but I imagine in like Montana, that's got to be fucking fascinating, dude. There are certain varieties of plant that will stay underground, just their root structure, maybe send up a shoot or two for like years and years and years before they even try to flower. And like I don't know,
Or it's just sitting dormant.
Exactly.
Because there's so many invasive species just picking up the sunlight. And it's
Yeah.
just waiting for a glimpse of light. And then as soon as we do like a clear cut or controlled burning, there's a lot of that practiced here in Illinois. Do you guys do controlled burning? I guess not in Yellowstone, because you said if there's wildfires, you just kind of let it go, right?
yeah, in general around the area they have been doing burns to prevent the spread of forest fires if they should happen. But technically inside Yellowstone, that's avoided.
Right. Okay. So there's tons of stuff just like laying dormant, waiting for the opportunity. And it's like, you said sometimes it's just sitting there for 10 years almost. Like they'll still survive. They're still kind of like going through their own cycles underneath, building up sugars and carbohydrates or whatever to eventually send those shoots up. But the strife, and the struggle and the conflict between animal and plant. I I think that's a fascinating thing to be able to isolate. As even though it's Yellowstone's intention is to let everything be, but to at least be able to, just like a couple square feet of isolation to show, like, well, this is the biodiversity in just this little area. I think that's a really valuable learning experience.
I think that's so cool. I want to see that.
Yeah. I've never been to Yellowstone, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, we went for my bachelor party. Drove around and walked around a little bit. And I've been back ice fishing, not in Yellowstone, but the surrounding area of Montana, Wyoming.
Which is just as wild as Yellowstone.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, it's awesome. If you've never been, we should definitely go.
Yep, 1,000%. I have never been. All right. Well, I think we've had a great conversation.
Yeah, I
with you,
think
Mike.
this has been awesome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. It's been really great learning about what you do and just a little bit of your perspective on the natural areas that are offered in the complete opposite end of the United States than where we are. So we're happy to have you here, and safe travels back to Montana.
My pleasure. I look forward to seeing you both out there.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, man. So excited.